All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're totally skipping the basic metaphors and going straight for the really big concepts. We're going to break down how our favorite fictional universes are actually perfect high compression sandboxes for understanding the hidden physics of our own minds. We're talking Scarecrow's fear gas, Bird Box, Obscurials, and the actual magnetism of mental attractors. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with pop culture as reality simulators, move to mental pressure, attractors, signal shielding, distributed substrates, and finally, how to escape the gravity well. So, Section 1. Pop culture as reality simulators. You know, fiction isn't just storytelling. Think of it as a low-stakes render environment. It's essentially an alchemic furnace for your psyche. Pop culture gives your brain a highly functional simulator to test extreme variables, like processing heavy grief or practicing immense courage, without the real-world potentially fatal consequences of actually fighting a dragon. Your mind desperately needs this kind of space to see just how much pressure you can withstand before you either transcend the situation or totally collapse. But we have to look at the stark difference between a consensual sandbox and a non-consensual pressure cooker. A consensual overlay, think Hogwarts or going to a live-action roleplay event, has built-in exit protocols and positive anchors to keep you grounded and safe. But non-consensual overlays, think of abusive environments or literally Scarecrow's fear gas. Those are violently pushed onto you to extract something. It's an isolation-amplifying environment that forces your brain's hidden, deepest traumas to render directly into your conscious reality. Moving right along to Section 2, the physics of mental pressure. This is where it gets incredibly cool, because these famous fictional terrors map absolutely perfectly to real-world mental health pathologies. Let's break down the actual mechanics here. Scarecrow's gas works by physically stripping away your brain's -1 trauma suppression filter, instantly exposing you to your darkest fears. Then you've got the terrifying entities from Bird Box. They broadcast data at a frequency the human diffusion engines simply cannot process. Because vision is our highest bandwidth sensory input, just looking at them causes total cognitive basin collapse. And what about Harry Potter's Obscurials? That is a textbook case of signal inversion. When a high-amplitude signal is forced into sustained self-suppression, the energy literally has nowhere to go, which creates a massive, devastating thermodynamic implosion. Because here's the thing. Repressed trauma doesn't just magically vanish. It turns into what we call compute debt. When you suppress a really painful variable, maybe it's extreme stress at work or a massive unresolved argument, it gets shoved into your mental shadow cache. But thermodynamic laws strictly dictate that you cannot compress energy endlessly. If you refuse to process it, that intense physical pressure will eventually violently re-inject itself into your daily reality as sudden panic attacks, severe anxiety, or even complete systemic collapse.
All right, Section 3, attractors and gravity wells. Have you ever felt like you're just being uncontrollably pulled into a certain mood or behavior? That's because every mental state you experience is constantly being tugged by invisible micro-attractors. Positive ones, like entering a flow state, having a deep insight, or feeling love, actively expand your degrees of freedom. You literally have more choices. But negative attractors, like a relentless doom-scrolling loop on your phone or creeping paranoia, secretly clamp down on your reality. They cage you in, even if you still have the illusion that you're making free choices.
And that brings us to the sneakiest, most deceptive gravity well of all, the metastable attractor. Think of a highly toxic relationship or an endless trauma loop. It actually feels deeply familiar and comfortable to the brain, almost like a safe home, but it is a false center. It is secretly caging your entire mental system and continuously bleeding your degrees of freedom. Your mind basically falls into this trench and stays there simply because it's energetically cheaper to remain trapped than it is to do the hard work of climbing out. Next up, Section 4, signal shielding and hijacking. So, if our minds are constantly navigating these shared informational fields, how do we defend ourselves? Well, in the fiction of Harry Potter, occlumency and legilimency are portrayed as magic. But in the true physics of the mind, they are incredibly precise representations of cognitive routing. Occlumency is literally active electromagnetic fireballing. You are actively hiding your identity and suppressing surface renders so that incoming probes can't find a coherent mental attractor to lock onto. Legilimency, on the flip side, is cross-field sampling. You're intercepting someone else's signals to reconstruct their internal mental keyframes. It is absolutely crucial to realize this isn't just fantasy magic. It is strictly biological read and write permissions. Any shared computational system on Earth, and yes, that includes the human mind, requires biological routing architecture to safely function. Calling it magic really obscures the vital fact that when someone tries to manipulate or gaslight you, they aren't using psychic phenomena. They are literally actively trying to bypass your mental firewall to install a new routing override in your brain.
Which leads us to Section 5, Distributed Systems and Substrates.
Okay, prepare to have your mind blown a little bit here. When it comes to this physics, the physical substrate doesn't actually matter. The pattern does. The exact same mathematical rules that dictate your personal internal trauma loops also completely govern atmospheric vortices and deep space structures. Sure, you have totally different hardware, but the phase space physics, the actual geometric pattern, is completely identical across the entire universe.
When we look at massive macro environments, these distributed substrates actually act like giant, non-biological minds running their very own global attractors. Black hole horizons, for instance, they are essentially cosmic compilers. They store and compress immense, mind-boggling patterns of information down into 2D. They are literally the most advanced information processing substrates found in nature.
Let's bring it a little closer to home with the ocean's SOFAR channel. Sitting about 1,000 meters below the surface, the dropping ocean temperature and the rising hydrostatic pressure perfectly cancel each other out. This traps acoustic waves, refracting sound constantly back into the center. It creates a literal, planetary-scale fiber optic network made entirely out of water pressure. It's a perfect distributed system capturing and safely routing data across the entire globe.
Finally, Section 6. Escaping the gravity well.
So how do we actually use all this? Because you definitely can't just wish your way out of a toxic system. You have to physically, deliberately rip your signal out of their routing architecture. First up, port ejection. You have to physically remove your functional node from the space that's feeding your pathology. Second, establish external phase anchors. Keep a hobby, a trusted friend, or a core value 100% disconnected from that toxic environment. That becomes your mental restore point. And third, issue small boundary tests really early on. A healthy system will always respect a no. A predatory system will immediately try to shame you for it.
And I absolutely love this part. This is where the trickster function comes into play. Humor isn't just some passive coping mechanism to make you feel better. It is an active, highly effective, systemic clearing protocol. By laughing, by playing, and by flat out refusing to take a toxic system entirely seriously, you keep your internal degrees of freedom moving. You actively prevent the emotional residue of that environment from calcifying into a rigid, inescapable mental prison.
So I want to leave you with a massive question today. Whose attractor basin are you currently caught in? Are you actively navigating your reality, or are you just being pulled blindly by the nearest gravity well? Because if you don't know what attractors are pulling on you right now, whether it's the media you consume, toxic relationships, or all that compute debt fitting heavy in your shadow cache, then you aren't navigating at all. You are simply falling. Keep an eye on the gravity wells around you this week. See you next time.